What's up, everyone? Welcome to another interview in Khaldor TV. Today on the show I have Liam Simpson, who you guys probably know a little bit better as Arcaner, currently playing for Team Liquid. And he has actually a really interesting story to tell because he originally comes from Australia and has been playing in the minor region for a long time, attended several BlizzCons, and then at some point made the decision that he wants to move to Europe to compete in HGC. And we're going to talk a little bit about exactly how that transition worked out for him, the drive that he has to make the move and take the risk to move to one of the major regions in Heroes of the Storm, try and play there. So welcome with me together, Liquid's Arcaner.
Hello, thank you for inviting me.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you here. So you have a pretty interesting story to tell. As we just heard in the intro, you actually moved regions in Heroes of the Storm. Before we touch upon that, though, tell me a little bit about how you actually started with Heroes of the Storm and if in esports you already had some previous experience.
Yep, so when I was back in Australia, I was playing Heroes of the Storm, I think from August 2014 is when I got invited. And then I played casually for probably half a year. And then I think it was leading up to BlizzCon 2015. There were like some ANZ tournaments. And from there onwards, I kind of became more competitive. And in 2017, I played for Nomia and went to quite a few international events. And then towards the end of the year, I decided to move to Europe to join the HGC. And I moved in September of that year. And ever since, sorry?
No, go on, sorry.
Ever since I've been playing in HGC, first with Method and now with Team Liquid.
So what exactly sparked the interest in competitive Heroes of the Storm in the first place? Did you already play another game comparatively and then transferred that over? Or why the sudden decision of moving from playing Heroes casually to esports and then pursuing that to the extent that you did?
Well, I started off playing World of Warcraft for many years during my childhood, and that led to being competitive in RBGs, rated battlegrounds, and I think that's where I first got my competitive drive, was from doing that. And I think that translated into Heroes of the Storm when I felt like I was playing well in like a solo queue sense in ANZ. I started to become very competitive and I wanted to sort of show up against other players in the ladder. And it was such a small community where everyone kind of knew each other. And because of that, if you were good at the game, you had a lot of respect within the community. And it was something that I envied from the other players. And because of like that envy, I guess I wanted to kind of practice a lot and improve and then try and contest those players and I guess see what it felt like to be respected.
Talk to me a bit about esports in Australia as far as you know it, because we, like every single time we go to an international event, we have Australian players in either one-on-one games or in Heroes of the Storm, a team game. One of the things that's always echoed is that it's really tough. First of all, internet oftentimes in a lot of locations isn't as good that you can really have a competitive experience. The scene is very small. It makes it difficult to practice, since if you're trying to go cross-server, you have to deal with a lot of ping. Tell me a little bit about how that is for you, or how that was for you.
Yeah, I think a lot of the challenges that people from Australia face is, at least in competitive Heroes, you're so isolated, so you can't really have any scrims or international exposure before you get to these events, and you're kind of locked within your own region in like this little bubble, and you don't really know how good you are compared to other regions. So at least for me, when I was going to, I think it was BlizzCon 2016, it was a big wake-up call on how large the gap was between major and minor region. And just generally with esports, I think Australia is challenged a lot by the fact that I feel like there's not many people that are interested in esports. I feel like, at least in Heroes of the Storm, a lot of the reason why the region struggles is there's quite a low population of players that are actually playing the game. And because of that, that affects how competitive solo queue is and how competitive the tournaments are within the region. That's probably how I felt strongly about when I was playing in ANZ.
So you were talking about attending your first BlizzCon, you were an international event and it being a bit of a wake-up call for you. How did that change your perception of the game and also of the way that you approach training within your own region?
I think it changed my perception of my own play individually. I didn't rate myself as highly, and I guess I got motivated a lot to improve and try and reach like a benchmark that I felt was set by a lot of the European players and Korean players. Yeah, I think it also helped me learn how to, I guess, embrace defeat. And I think probably actually one of the hardest things that I've had to deal with since being in Europe is I've transitioned from being a minor region player to a major region player, and I feel like I've achieved a lot through, I guess, being recruited into a good HGC team. But at these events, I don't think there's much of a difference in how I've felt at the result of it. I think the defeats that I've had at the Western Clash especially, the MSB wasn't as bad, but I guess I still had the same feelings. The feelings that I had at these events, I felt like were so similar to what I used to have when I was a minor region player. That's probably the hardest thing I've had to deal with, is I guess like a lack of success in my eyes.
So for you, like, explain to me that a little bit more, because especially at mid-season brawl, I mean, you guys, there was definitely an improvement when you compare it to the results that you had with previous teams, or at least in the amount of play and how you measured up against top teams, I would say. And of course, you come then also from competing within Europe and claiming that spot, whereas from what I understand, when you were in Australia as a minor region, it was a lot easier for you to just maintain that level, but it was harder to improve. So why do you feel that you haven't, or why do you have that feeling that you didn't really improve enough, or that you have that feeling of not achieving or accomplishing quite what you set your goals to?
I think the main thing was that I always felt when I was at these events as a minor region player and a major region player that we always underperformed in our games, and I felt like we didn't play to our potential. So I feel like the main reason why I was so disappointed with our results in Method was because we had really good scrim results, I guess, leading up to the MSB, and I felt like I was playing well, and I felt like my teammates were playing well. So we had a goal that we wanted to like place high and try our best, and it felt very crushing to get reverse swept by Fnatic, and we thought we were like the better team going into the series. So I think that's why I guess I have these feelings.
Okay, we'll come back to that in a bit, because I actually think this is super interesting, but let's talk about your decision to actually move to another region. How did that come to pass? I mean, it's actually like a really bold move to say, okay, I'm going to leave Australia and I'm going to move somewhere else. So first of all, where did that decision come from? Because you risked a lot with it. You could have ended up in a position where you potentially wouldn't have found a team. Maybe the team that you find is not able to get to the international events, where within Australia, as one of the best players there, you were more or less guaranteed to attend every single event. So what made you to risk all of that and to make that jump?
Well, I think the 2017 MSB, so this is when I was in Nomia, I had kind of a crossroads in my life where I qualified for the event, and then I had university exams at the time, and my university kind of told me that I couldn't go to the event if I wanted to do my exams. So I hit this crossroads where I had to choose whether or not I would pursue university during this year or not in 2017, and I chose to go to the MSB. So I was already at this kind of place where I did have the opportunity to pursue HOTS, and it was, I think, leading up to the second Western Clash, which I think was hosted in Ukraine, in Kiev, where I was playing Hero League in Australia, and I always just like remember this specific point where I got so fed up with the queue times and the low quality of games, and just this repetition of a disappointed feeling I had within the region, and that like specific point where I just snapped and decided like I've had enough, I want to move to a major region. And a lot of I guess the reason why I decided to move to a major region, because every time I was at these events, the main thing I looked forward to was just being there to play Hero League and to be amongst better players, like the environment itself. It wasn't so much playing on stage that I was excited about, like the little things of just getting your tournament account and having everything unlocked and being in a region where climbing Hero League was exciting. I think that was what drove me to want to move to a major region and not just, I guess, go full-time in Australia.
There's a couple of things that I want to ask immediately, but one thing first. You said you were fed up with the experience that you had solo queuing in Australia, and then you moved to a major region. Now, of course, when you look at the pro scene within either Europe, within any of the major regions, actually, there's also a lot of unhappy faces when it comes to the solo queue experience. Do you think that major regions players are spoiled, or do you feel, or do you acknowledge, okay, there are still problems here that need to be improved upon? What's your take on it coming from that background?
I don't think they're spoiled at all. I think the threshold that they have, I guess, of dealing with a bad Hero League experience is a lot, I guess, lower than what I had back in ANZ.
Mm-hmm.
I guess you don't really understand what a terrible Hero League game is until you've like been placed with bronze players, for example. But I think a lot of the complaints that the European players have and NA players have about Hero League is warranted. And I think there are a lot of improvements that Blizzard need to make for Hero League to make it more competitive and to make it more rewarding for, I guess, players who want to be competitive, not just professional players, but open division players or casuals who happen to be talented. So I think a lot of the arguments are warranted, but I still think there are a few Hero League players who, I guess, complain more than they actually play the game, is how I feel. That's where I kind of disagree.
If you could change something about Hero League where you feel, okay, this would have a big impact, at least for the competitive scene. I mean, there's always, of course, that clash that you have between here's the competitive aspect, here's like what professional players want, and then you also have, of course, casuals that have a completely different approach and want different things out of the game. But you as a professional player, if you could change something about Hero League to improve it, what would it be? What do you think is the biggest thing right now for you personally?
I think the most frustrating thing to me is that the ladder isn't definitive as like a ranking on who are the best players, because we have obviously a separation of Hero League points and actual MMR. So I think the thing I'd want changed the most is to have MMR shown somehow.
Okay. You said earlier that, or you explained why you made the decision coming back to your choice to go to a major region to move, that at some point you just got frustrated and you said, okay, I want to commit to esports here and I think I have more chances in a major region with that. What made you choose Europe? Because arguably from like, okay, what can I achieve in the region? You could have made the argument, especially back then, that in North America, maybe it's an easier goal to accomplish. So where did the choice come from to go in Europe instead of going to North America, where you might have had it a bit easier at the start, or maybe even Korea, where you have teams like Gen G, back then MVP Black, but especially in the 7th and 8th slot, you have teams that are a lot easier, or like where the skill level isn't that high. Language barrier, of course, being a bit of an issue, but at the same time, normally when it comes to game communication, a lot of teams still get around that. So where did the choice come from, and did you consider other regions as well, and why did you decide against it?
I think the main reason was it was logistically easy for me to move to Europe because I am a dual citizen. Like I have family, a lot of family here in the UK. So I mean, I did consider moving to North America, and that was my initial plan. But like when you actually become serious about it and you think, is this possible? And like, what do I have to sacrifice for it? What do I have to do? It became much more difficult than I anticipated. So I think this is why I went for Europe, is because I could move to the UK quite easily, and I would have a lot of things that would, I guess, amount to stress in my life eliminated. And actually, I think I was very, I guess, fortunate. Looking back on it now, I think I'm very fortunate to have succeeded in taking such a huge risk. And I think if I was to even just be recruited into a team that wasn't sponsored, it would have been a lot harder for me financially to like afford to move. So I think I was very lucky to be able to get into expert and be paid like salary to do what I love.
Did you have a backup plan? Like, what was the plan in case that an HGC team wouldn't work out? Would you have been able to go into Open Division and form a team there, or what was the idea for you?
Well, the main plan was to just come over here early, and by coming over here early, I could play a lot of Hero League and impress people. I was kind of conflicted on how I was going to impress people. to begin with, I was going to, I guess, play support in Hero League and try like advertise myself as a support main, because I felt like there were more vacancies in this role than, I guess, ranged DPS. But I kind of hit a point where I was like, I don't think I am able to be flashy enough or impressive enough on this role. So I decided to play more ranged in Hero League to show, I guess, my mechanics off. Regarding backup plans, like moving over here, I had the plan that I eventually wanted to be in HGC, so I did consider, like, if the worst happens and I don't get in, I will stay here and like play through Open Division and try get in. But honestly, I didn't expect this to be the case, and I kind of put everything into being recruited into HGC over Open Division.
How much did you communicate with HGC teams once that you came over? Because I remember back then everyone knew that you are making the move, and of course you were on a lot of people's mind. You said that you were trying to impress people by playing a lot of Hero League and just showing in those games with other pros that you are an option in case that they need a player. But did you also have, through the contacts that you made at international events, already a dialogue with players where you were trying to just get an avenue of maybe getting a scrimmage every now and then?
Yeah, this is something that I thought about quite extensively, and I ended up networking quite a lot with a few of the players. I had already kind of established like contacts with quite a few of the European players. I think Snitch was one of them, but I think the main player that I was talking to when I first got here was Wooby, and I think I was kind of befriending Chris and a few other players. I think also I was trying to get in contact with Team Liquid, because that was a team that I really wanted to play in. But yeah,
that worked out.
I put a lot of effort into like adding people on Battle.net that were pros and like talking to them as much as I could, trying to like sort of get in there to get a tryout. I think if you kind of just sit back and wait for people to approach you, it can be very risky. And you can take things like this for granted.
Did you encounter any problems when you came over and you started playing some stuff that you just didn't expect, and there were obstacles that were in your way where you had to somehow circumvent them and get around them?
I don't recall like any specific obstacles that I faced. I think the main thing that I kind of had to deal with, or that was a bit unexpected, was I think I had a few teams that wanted to try me out, and I was in a position where I had to sort of make a choice on who I wanted to play with and where I wanted to go. So I think initially I was approached by Zealots to try out, and this was with Mopsio. And I think I had a few other sort of like offers from people, unofficial offers from people, I think most of the teams. And I heard also a rumor, because obviously you had all the Roster Apocalypse stuff happening at BlizzCon, and there was a lot of unknown at BlizzCon. Actually, maybe that was the biggest obstacle or like unexpected thing, was the BlizzCon changes, because I guess I had all these plans to probably go into Zealots for HGC, and then everything kind of got shaken up by the BlizzCon changes.
Well, yeah, at some point, I mean, the changes back then were actually pretty extensive, and there was a lot of back and forth where people had plans, and then of course there are sometimes contracts that people forget about, or there's like other things that need to be considered. So a lot of these plans fell apart and reformed. Were you during that period at some point worried that if you don't make a decision early on, that you might be left behind, and that you might be one of the players who doesn't end up in a team just because he didn't make the choice early enough?
Yeah, I was kind of sort of entrenching my feet into the Zealots sort of environment. I was really trying my best to please them and to be flexible. Like, I think originally I tried out for them as a ranged carry, and I think there was a situation where Chris was looking to be like a free agent looking for like a new team, and I kind of made the decision to like swap to support and like bring Chris in and try that. But yeah, it was a very confusing time for me, actually, going from being a minor region player where I am kind of in the best team, and I'm kind of comfortable, I guess, to go into a major region and being a part of, I guess, the craziest roster apocalypse for a while.
What is actually your main role originally? Because you talked about playing support, we've seen you on the off lane, we've seen you're the main tank, and now you're the range damage dealer. What's actually your original role?
My original role is support, and I think it is my best role, but it's not a role that you can sort of impress people on, like I said before. And I'm very happy at the moment playing range carry, and I think range carry is like very close to being my best role. But yeah, I'd say, well, my original role is support, and I'd say I'm a bit better at it.
So just talking a little bit of when you found your team, you start scrimming and you make it into your first season here. How was that? Like, how much of a difference was that? Was it an adjustment period for you? Were there any specific things that were really highlights for you where you say, okay, this is a massive change from what I'm used to, and I need to adjust to that? Or how was just that transition from on a I want to say like in regards to the game more so than the circumstances and where you lived and the move itself. So in terms of the game, what was the biggest change there, and how did you deal with all of that?
I guess the biggest change was the level of mechanics that you faced, like from other teams in scrims, and the pace of the game. I found that actually quite like alarming when I was first scrimming, and I actually felt quite pressured to perform like in these circumstances where the game's being played at a much faster pace, where people are actively punishing mistakes and making proactive rotations. And I think, like looking back on it, I think I probably played quite subpar compared to like, I guess, how I play now and how I've improved. So I think, yeah, the main difference was just, I think the pace of the game was the main difference.
Are you happy with your development so far as a player ever since you moved here?
It's hard. I think I am. Obviously, I've had so many role changes that I've, I guess, kind of impeded on my own improvement by continuously like resetting like my progress. I think looking back on it, I was happy with my melee play. I think I improved very quickly and I learned fast, and I kind of reached a very like high level of play. But I was disappointed that I think probably around halfway through, I think probably week 3 or week 4 in the first phase, I felt like I was starting to fall off, and a lot of that was because I was losing sort of motivation to play the role. I didn't really enjoy it. I didn't think it was for me. Then on tank, I feel like I played quite well. I consider it my worst role, but I think I learnt at a reasonable rate. And at the MSB, I think I played smart. And although I didn't really practice for the event, I think I played okay. But now on ranged, I guess my standards and what I expect from myself are very high, to the point where at the moment, at least, I'm not entirely happy with my performance. I guess what I expected was to kind of have a few weeks where I'm relearning, I guess, my old mechanics, and I think I kind of achieved that, and I started to play really well, I think, in the first 2 weeks. But especially in my series against Dignitas, I was quite disappointed. I felt like I made a lot of errors that were due to me being forced to make a play that I didn't really need to play. And I guess at least now I'm not really happy with my performance, and I'm trying very hard to improve. But unfortunately, the Hero League has been like reset, and it's a new season, and the games are really bad, and I can't like get good practice, I guess. So something that I'm struggling with now is to try and improve in this Hero League environment. But
What's
yeah,
the goal for you? Like, where's the goal for you individually, and also, of course, like with your team, being that Team Liquid or a future team? So what are the 2 goals that you have?
Well, the goal for me is not so much short term, but at least by the end of the year, I want to be the best ranged carry in Europe, and that's going to be a very hard goal to achieve because of how strong of a player Poyok is. I don't think I'm better than him at the moment, but I don't think I'm that far off either. But my main goal is for next year to be, I guess, the best at what I do internationally. I want to be contending rich. That's going to be an extremely hard goal to achieve, but I think I can reach it if I guess if I stay persistent and I guess this ties in with my goals with Liquid, and I really want to emphasize the idea that we don't change our roster, that we work really hard to improve as a unit, and that we, I guess, talk about our issues and try and avoid scapegoating a player or looking at the downsides of players when times are tough. And I guess our loss, like our 0-3 loss to Team Dignitas was, I guess, a challenge for us.
How so? Because like that's, I mean, obviously at that point, both teams were at a 4-0 track record within the HGC standings, and Team Liquid had one of the best starts in HGC since 2017, since we had that pretty infamous run back then. But still, you went into the series. I don't really want to call it the underdog, but Dignitas was the favorite given that track record ever since that lineup formed. So why was that a big problem for you guys? Were you really thinking, okay, we're going to take them down here easily, or was it just the way that the games went?
We didn't expect to win the series. We expected to at least be competitive. We saw ourselves as Dignitas's rival. I think like this phase has always been about which teams kind of learn the fastest and become in sync the fastest because of all the roster changes that have happened. And I think we started off very strong, where within a few days of scrimming, we like picked up pace and we started to perform really well. We were beating pretty much, I guess, every team that we faced in scrims we were like had a positive win rate against. And I think the only team that realistically gave us trouble was Dignitas. And because of this, we started to be really hyped for this phase. We thought we could do really well, and I still think we can do really well. But because of how strong we opened the season, it led us to, I guess, this challenge of Dignitas, where if we have a bad performance against Dignitas, at least for me, it will reinforce the worry that we aren't as good as we think we are, and it's just a matter of us starting off well. And I think the biggest challenge we face right now is to come off of this loss with the mentality that we need to improve at a faster rate than other teams. And I think that's the biggest challenge now, is to just improve faster than Method and improve faster than Fnatic. And both these teams are very competitive, especially Method, considering that they have the same roster that they had last year. So yeah, for me, I was worried that we weren't as good as we thought we were. And that's why the Dignitas loss was so challenging for me, and I think for my team as well.
Talking a little bit about Team Liquid, how big of a change was it for you to switch teams? Obviously, you had a role swap that came with that made things on at least the mechanical side, of course, quite different. But if you compare now the different teams that you've been on, how much of a change was it from one team to another regarding communication and how players interact and how you approach a game that you have?
It's quite a difference being in Liquid than it was in Method. I think the main thing that stands out to me in Liquid is that the players, all four of them, are much more, I guess, they're more professional, and I feel like they're more mature. I feel like the format of this team, the core of the team, it felt very welcoming, and it felt very comforting for me to join. I felt at ease, and I felt like I could trust the players to make the right decisions and I guess have the greater good in mind going into the season. And actually the Method situation where I was kicked from Method, I took it quite badly. I thought it was a very shameful thing for me to be kicked from a team. Mm-hmm. I worked really hard and I tried to be the best teammate that I could be. And I don't hold anything against the Method players. I respect the decision to reform their old roster. I think it's a smart decision, it's the right decision, but for me it was just shameful to be kicked. And I was actually surprised that going into Method I would be welcomed in such a way that I felt like it was like a blessing for me to be in the team and to have changed team.
Shameful from your perspective or from what they did from your end?
I think it's shameful for me to be kicked from my perspective. I think I'm letting myself down. I think like for me, my goal was to sort of climb the ladder and play really well and try and work hard to be a good teammate. And for me to be kicked, I think it goes against what my goals were.
To me, that's really interesting to hear because I mean I know a little bit about the roster changes back then, and there were several teams that wanted to already take you away from them. To be honest with you, I didn't even know you got kicked in the first place. I just heard that several teams showed an interest in you. So to me, this is really interesting that you perceive it that way. But it feels like you put a lot of pressure on yourself in general. You have really high goals, which is absolutely laudable. I actually think that's great. And you're very realistic about it, how you portray them as long-term goals, and you have short-term goals and milestones that you want to achieve on the same way. But you just seem like an insanely hardworking player. When you came over, the thing that every player echoed within Europe was that you're just a workhorse, that you're just grinding it out. Then you make from our, like from audience and the caster perspective, you switch through three different roles, and on every role you reach like a bit of a high stand-up, like a high standard that you actually show. Where on the tank role, for example, where you say, I didn't really like that, it's not quite my role. Every tank player that I talked to behind the scenes said Arcaner is doing insanely well considering how little experience he has on tank. Where does that drive come from your side? I mean, it's actually insane. You move from minor region to major one, take a huge risk, you switch through different roles, achieve a decent level on every single one of them, call it shameful when a team decides to let you go for whatever reason, and find yourself now in, again, one of the top three, top two teams here. Where does that drive come from you? Were you always that competitive, or how did that come to pass?
I don't think I was always this competitive. I think a lot of the drive comes from, I guess, what I want to feel, like emotionally, in my experiences. And for me, what I want to feel is like success, I guess. I want to be successful at something. And because I feel like I'm talented at what I'm doing here, I feel like I can achieve success. And for me, I really just want to be in the best team in the region. And if I achieve that success, I think it'll be very fulfilling. And having that goal at the back of my mind all the time, I think drives me to be the best I can be. And I guess I have a lot of pride in my own performance, and no matter what role I'm playing, I really want to excel in it and learn as much as I can. And I think I've always been interested in a challenge, and I think that's a lot of the reason why I do all these role swaps. A lot of it is like me within wanting to have a challenge, and maybe sometimes I'm a little bit bored, or I guess I want something new. And I think a lot of the drive comes from, I guess, just my interest in what I'm doing and learning new things. And there's so many aspects to the game that I can explore. And I think me playing a lot of heroes and being flexible allows me to express myself.
So, do you think that all the role changes that you went through actually help you, let's say with the current role, that when you look at a tank on the other side or at an offlaner, you know what they're thinking because you played the same role? Is that an advantage for you when you switch into any other role because you know that thought process a little bit more, or do you think it doesn't really play too much of doesn't have too much of an impact?
I think it has a quite a large impact on how I play this role. When I was playing melee and tank, I learned a lot about what the optimal play was. For example, how a Blaze should use his stun in a certain situation. And now when I'm playing ranged and I'm trading into these heroes, or I'm in a team fight, I'm always sort of looking ahead to what will happen in a team fight. And I feel like me playing the other roles has helped me understand how situations will unfold and what the enemy's best play is to make. And I think it helps me outplay people, and it helps me adjust and adapt in a team fight or in a situation in game.
How do you actually improve? Like, let's say you switch a role and you decide, okay, my team needs me on the tank position. How did that come to pass outside of you just playing the heroes and starting to grind them? Did you look to other teams, other players, and picked one that you tried to an extent emulate, or see, okay, what does that person do? Like, how does that process look?
I think I learn quite fast when I change role, and a lot of that I attribute to copying other players and learning from other players. When I role swapped to tank, I think I immediately messaged a few players, mainly Warby and Breeze, for advice. I messaged Warby asking for advice on who I should learn from and who I should watch. And then he told me the Koreans were really good, and also Breeze. And then from there, I asked Breeze for some advice, and I watched a few of his VODs. But I think the way that I learned fast was, at least in-game, in scrims that I'm practicing, outside of EuroLeague, I mean, like actually in scrims, I felt like when I am exposed to a situation, I remember like quite clearly like what would happen in that situation in future. I think I learned to play smart on tank, and that was how I played well on the role. I feel like I didn't need to play a copious amount of Hero League or something to learn, I guess, from a knowledge perspective, everything about a role. I think I learned fast because I didn't have to repeat things to learn them. That's how I felt.
How much time do you currently spend with the game? Like normally, when we're looking at European scrims, most teams have 2 scrim blocks per day, so that equates to 6 hours. Outside of that, what does your schedule look like?
I think when I was grinding the most, it was always like if I'm not scrimming, or if I'm not eating or sleeping, I'm playing HOTS. So it was like maybe 13 or 14 hours a day of playing. So obviously 6 hours of that would be scrims. But
So
I think
you were trying to put the Koreans to shame, basically, with your schedule.
Yeah, but to be fair, it's unhealthy to play like this. So ever since I got back from the mid-season brawl, I've been taking time away from the game to work on my health. I've been exercising, working out, and eating healthy. So I guess since the MSB, I haven't been grinding as much as I usually do, but I'm trying to play probably 12 hours a day.
Are you afraid of burning out at some point? Is that
No,
something?
not really.
Is that a risk? No?
I think I enjoy the game too much to be burnt out from it. I think recently I kind of felt like, or maybe I don't enjoy the game as much anymore. But when this was happening, I was getting kind of into all the fitness, and I was kind of watching like Netflix and relaxing a bit more and thinking about real life stuff. I think if I don't have these kinds of distractions, then I probably won't get burnt out. It might sound weird, but if I'm committing to HOTS and focusing on it, I don't think I'll be burnt out by playing it too much.
You live with Roba right now, right? So you guys share an apartment. So talk to me a little bit how that actually worked out, because you moved first. Was at that point already a plan that Roba might come to Europe as well, or were you, so to say, like the guinea pig? He checked out if everything works fine with your transition, and then he made that move. Were you guys friends before? Like, talk to me a bit about that.
We were very good friends in Nomia. We bonded quite a lot, and I think we trusted each other quite a lot. And because of this, and because I knew he was competitive and he really enjoyed the game, I kind of recommended, like, hey, why don't you move to Europe with me and play in the HGC? And I also kind of wanted him to come, not just for himself, but I guess I wanted a companion to come with me to sort of like help me on my journey. And I didn't really want to see him stuck in ANZ when I knew he had a lot of competitive creativity that he wanted to explore. So yeah, it was something that was kind of more so planned that he would come over with me. It wasn't like a last minute, like, hey, I've come over and everything seems good, you can come too, sort of thing. Yeah, it was kind of planned, I guess.
Do you guys talk about your games now? Not only when you go up against each other, but since you live in the same apartment, so after an HGC weekend, do you guys review the games together, or how much do you talk about the game? How much is there going on when you just like try to evaluate that?
We talk regularly about the game, but it's more at a casual level. It's the same with my other friends in Europe, like mainly Snitch. I don't want to get too involved with like their team and how they're going with their, I guess, HGC games. I kind of want to respect other people's privacy in that sense. And of course, I love to talk about the game like with my friends, and I do that often with Snitch and Rob. But yeah, we don't really like review like HGC games together. I think me and Snitch sometimes watch them together.
When it comes to social media and just in general fans, how is the Australian community? How did they actually handle that move? And also your old team, was it something where they were happy for you that you took that challenge? Was there a little bit of resentment, maybe even that you leave the region? Like, can you talk to me a bit about how that feedback was?
I don't think there was any resentment at all. I didn't really get any negative feedback from the ANZ community. I got a lot of positive feedback actually, and Rob does as well. Rob is more, I guess, connected with the ANZ community. I wasn't really involved that much in it, I guess. I didn't. It's hard to explain, but the community is very, very different to, I guess, the European HGC community. Everyone kind of knows each other, and it's kind of like there's like cliques in there, like friendships and friendship groups and stuff. So leading up to like my move to Europe, I kind of disconnected a little bit with it. But I mean, occasionally I always see like supportive messages from ANZ people, and I feel proud when I represent my region the way I do in like being in European HGC. I got inspiration from, I think there's a few Dota 2 players who are from Australia originally who compete internationally. I think there's one called Anna and one called KP or KPI, however you pronounce it. And I think those players inspired me to represent my region the same way that they do. So I think if I'm to win tournaments and do really well in HGC, it wouldn't just mean a lot for me, for myself. It would mean a lot to like achieve something for ANZ.
How important is feedback to you in general from the community? There's a lot of players that go regularly, let's say, to Reddit or Twitter, some to completely avoid it, since there's usually a huge spectrum of feedback that people get, and a lot of people focus more so, which is actually quite human, more so on the negative feedback that you get more so than on the positive. Does one or the other affect you in any kind of way?
I try to stay away from like a Reddit feedback or Twitch chat feedback as much as possible. I think the only time I'm kind of interested to see what people are saying is if I think I'm playing really well or if my team is doing really well. I guess it's like kind of approval of what you're doing. But as soon as like I'm playing bad or like we might lose a game or something, I won't have any like interest to see what the community is saying on Reddit or on Twitch chat. I know there's a few players in this region that do sort of monitor that sort of stuff, and I guess I'm not as bothered with what people are going to say about how I'm playing, even if it's good or bad. I'm more sort of, I guess, in touch with how I feel myself about my own play. I feel like I have a lot of, I guess, confidence in myself to understand how to deal with playing poorly.
Okay, I want to come back to something that you said very early when we started all of this. You said that when you made the choice to go to a major region, one of the reasons was that you had to make, well, one of those crossroads where you had to make the decision, okay, do I go to an international event or do I do my university exams, since they didn't allow you to do both? So that means that you stopped going to university completely, or are you just taking a break? I mean, there's some countries where you can do that, some where you can't. So, and also, what did you study at that time? So talk to me a bit about that.
Yeah, I think I was in the middle of my third year of studying chiropractic. And when the crossroads occurred, for me, deep down, I felt like this was it. I wouldn't come back to uni and do the same degree. Maybe like way down the track, when I finish this career, I might go back to university and study something, but I guess I'll deal with that when it happens. But for sure, I'm not really putting it on hold and then going to come back later and finish it. I think that's like a chapter closed for me.
So what is the long-term plan right now? Or do you think like past that, like after Heroes, for example, do you have also like an idea, at least you want to stay within esports if in any way possible, or do you think that at that point you're just going to see what happens?
I've thought about what I would do after I finish being a professional player, and I've thought about sort of staying within the esports scene. I've actually thought about maybe doing something like casting or being an analyst, like on the desk or something. I've thought about that sort of side of things. I've thought about like all the backstage stuff with the production and event coordination, and those things do interest me. But I'm so happy doing what I'm doing now that I haven't really troubled myself thinking too hard about what I'm going to do after this. But I have thought briefly about these things.
You're also running your own stream, right? Like I remember that you're still streaming. Do you, like the last time that I actually watched you, you basically made the decision and you said, okay, I'm gonna just show my own gameplay. I'm not gonna commentate around it. Was that too distracting? Was that something that you couldn't really focus on your own plays enough, or where did that choice come from?
Actually, streaming has been quite difficult for me. It's been a challenge. I guess the main reason for making that decision, I don't think it's a permanent thing. It's just, I guess, depends on my mood, whether or not I use a mic or webcam. The main thing for me is that I don't want to be feeling pressure to be competitive on an entertaining sort of level. I see people like Chris and Alex or even Cracknix who have been very successful with their streams in an entertaining way. And I feel like trying to compete with that. And just because of the way Twitch works, where you see your viewers, you see your subs, and you can kind of see how different you are in terms of your success compared to other people. I don't want to be competitive like that because I guess I don't see myself as much of an entertaining person at face value, I guess. So I guess the decision to be more gameplay oriented was, if people want to watch my stream, I guess it's because of my play, because I don't think I'm an entertaining person.
Well, I can only recommend everyone to check your stream out. And again, like I'm really, really impressed with the way that you've so far done in Europe, the way that you also changed just roles, and like the drive that you have is really something that I think is very, very admirable. So I hope that you have a lot of luck for the future, that next year you are going to have that fight with Rich for the #1 spot. And thank you very much for being in the interview. It was a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
If you guys enjoyed today's interview, make sure that you give the video a thumbs up on YouTube and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done that yet. It's one of the best ways how you can help to support the show a little bit, and of course also make sure that we have future episodes coming up. And talking about that, if you have any suggestions who you would like to be interviewed, be it Heroes of the Storm or another game just in an esports environment, let me know. Drop a comment in the comment section and I'm going to see what I can do. See you next week with another interview, and I hope that you guys have a good day. See you soon. Bye-bye.